Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our regular weekday morning podcast on Kabbalah for Heretics with me, your chief heretic, Yakov, Leib, HaKohain. Over the past 30 years or so, we have been meeting every single weekday morning with some very rare exceptions, systematically going through the Zohar, volume by volume, cover to cover, page by page, sentence by sentence. And over the past 30 years, we have completed volumes 1, 2, 3, and very recently, volume 4. Last week, we began volume 5, the final volume of the Zohar. This is a major project, and I welcome all of you who are listening to participating in it. Much of it has been recorded, and you can, in fact, if you wish, listen to most, if not all, of the recordings over these past 30-some years. We're in volume 5 now, just beginning volume 5. It's Leviticus 12, 1 through 13. Right off the bat, as I've been saying all these years, the depth of the Zohar gets deeper and deeper as we go into the volumes, so that it was pretty arcane and hidden in volume 4, and it's particularly so in volume 5. And to prove what I'm saying, right off the bat, in volume 5, it begins with the commentary on, and the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, when a woman, etc. And it then begins to discourse the hidden meaning of that in terms of sacred sexuality. Volume 5, right off the bat. This verse, he said, is spoken by the community of Israel, who in the exile lies in the dust. Now notice, it's community of Israel. There's the community of Israel, there are the sons of Israel, there are the children of Israel. The children of Israel and sons and daughters of Israel, that word, those words, pertain specifically to the Jews, who are born members of the community of the Israel. But the community of Israel is a reference to the integrated community of Israel, in which there are Jews and Gentiles alike. The Gentiles having come in under the tent of Israel, not the religion of Judaism, not the religion of Judaism, but who have come in under the tent of Judaism to become equal in status and stature with the B'nai Yisrael, the sons and daughters of Israel. Who in the exile lies in the dust, in an alien, unclean land, and therefore complains of her bed, and beseeches, quote, him whom her soul loveth, unquote, to deliver her from thence. She, quote, seeks him but finds him not, unquote. For it is not his way to unite with her, except in his temple. She, quote, calls him, and he answers not, unquote. For she dwells among other nations, and only his God's sons hear his voice. Only God's sons hear his voice. That is to say, Gentiles who are not members of the community of Israel, who have not been brought into the community of Israel willingly and forcefully by the Jews, those who are not within the community of Israel do not hear God. Now, oh my goodness, that is so chauvinistic. Oh, there you go, those damn Jews. Boy, oh boy. No. Let me read again what it says. It says, only God's sons hear his voice. I refer you in this regard to St. Paul's letter to the Ephesians, where he says, you Gentiles, because you are not members of the community of Israel, are without hope and without God. Paul, the architect of Christianity, says that. He goes on to say, however, through the blood of Messiah Yeshua, you Gentiles that were very far from us Jews have been brought very close to us. The mission of Jesus was not to save the Jews necessarily, but to bring the Gentiles into his Father's house. For it is not his way to unite with her except in his temple. She calls him, and he answers not, for she dwells among the other Gentiles. And only God's sons hear his voice. Now, before you leave in disgust about the chauvinism of this, it is not. Paul says exactly the same thing in Ephesians, right at the beginning. I believe it's chapter 2 of Ephesians. Rabbi Yitzchak interpreted thus, quote, I make cause to him of my bed, that he may unite me to gladden and bless me. For we have learned from the union of the king with the community of Israel, many righteous ones obtain a holy inheritance, and many blessings accrue to the world. In this sense, the community of Israel is seen as the feminine. And in fact, Tiferet, which has the parts of community of Israel, is that sephira in which all the other 9 sephiras are reunited. It's the only sephira that is true. Just look at a drawing and you'll see it. This is a reference to that Sephirotic tree. And when God and the community of Israel, God and Tiferet, the smaller face, the Messiah, Sephira 6 of the 10 Sephiras, are united, many righteous ones obtain a holy inheritance, and many blessings accrue to the world. Rabbi Abba was once going from Barakania to the cave of Lydda, along with Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Chia. Now listen, the fact that it says he's going to the cave of Lydda is a very arcane reference. Caves were, are, and always have been extremely mystical places. If I'm not mistaken, the ancient Greeks had ceremonies where there were special caves where people would come and lie in them, deep, deep, deep into the bowels of the earth. No light, no sound, total sensory deprivation, and be ministered by priests, Greek priests, and they would have visions. They're very common among people who go into and stay in caves. So we can interpret this to mean that Rabbi Abba was going to the cave of Lydda in order to have a mystical experience in that cave. There was a whole movement back in the 70s called sensory deprivation tanks. And some of you may remember them. I actually used them. I had marvelous learning experiences from them. These were tanks with just enough water in them that when you got in, you would float. There were Epsom salts and so forth in the water to make it so you would float. You could not sink. And it was totally dark, totally. Not one scrap of light, totally soundproof, not one sound. So in that tank, for periods ranging from a half hour to hours, you were totally deprived of all sensory input, just as people were in these caves, such as the cave of Lydda. I had such an experience. It was one of my first, where I was lying in there totally deprived of sensory input, humming and oming and doing everything I could think of happen. And of course, nothing happened because I was making it happen. And I just stopped doing anything. And at that moment, I saw, with my eyes closed, floating in front of me, a key ring of ancient brass keys. And I thought, oh my God. And there they were, right in front of my closed eyes. And I thought to myself, I wonder what will happen when I open my eyes. Now listen. And so I opened my eyes, and I still saw that ancient ring of brass keys. It was being projected out from its source, the brain, into the totally darkened outer environment. When my eyes were closed, out on the inside surface of my closed eyelids. When my eyes were opened, the projector projected them out onto the blank screen of the total darkness. What is within surrounds us. What is within surrounds us. People who have out-of-body experiences are experiencing much the same thing. The inner image of the body is being projected out, particularly those who have these experiences of extraterrestrials. Almost invariably, you'll notice they have such experiences at night in their beds when it's dark. So I'm telling you, it's not that they're imagining those extraterrestrials. It's just that they are not coming from outer space. They are coming from inner space. They are autonomous. They are projections, like a moving picture camera. They are projections of inner autonomous archetypes. There they are. They have their own reality. But the reality comes from within. This is why, apparently, Rabbi Abba was going to the cave of Lydda. And along with him were Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chia. Said Rabbi Yossi, it is written, quote, a virtuous woman is a crown to her husband, unquote. Again, it returns to sacred sexuality. A virtuous woman is a crown to her husband, unquote. You'll remember that the first sephira of the 10 sephiros, the first totally undifferentiated mind of God, is Keter, crown. So it's saying here that the woman is that crown of God. It is that first sephira where God is totally united in its own male and female aspects. It is written, a virtuous woman is a crown to her husband. The virtuous woman, he said, is the community of Israel. And she that maketh ashamed refers to the idolatrous Gentiles whom God cannot abide. As it says, quote, I abhorred them, unquote, from Leviticus. Again, God abhors the Gentile. Well, I quoted to you from Ephesians, where that's clearly stated. When Paul says, you Gentiles, because essentially you're not Jews and in the community of Israel, are without hope and without God. Paul says that. in Malachi, the prophet Malachi, God says, Israel, Jacob I love, but Esau I hated. Jacob is symbolic of the Jews, and Esau is symbolic of the Gentiles. We've talked about that many times. Jacob I love, but Esau I hated. And the Jews reply in Malachi, how can you love us when you sent Esau the Gentiles to destroy us? And he says again, Jacob I love, but Esau I hated. Let him build up, I will tear him down. Now, this is not chauvinism. You can see where this much later chauvinistic aspect arises in the Jew who is not fully conscious. That's the problem. That's the problem with us Jews as a people, that we are not fully conscious of our mission and our reasons for that mission. God says to the Jewish people, be thou a light unto the Gentile. God is not saying that we Jews should isolate ourselves from the Gentiles, that we should push them away, that we should have nothing to do with them. On the contrary, we are told to be a light unto them. And those who do not receive that light are without God. Now, it's not the light of the Jew they receive, but the light of God through the Jew that they receive. Now, look, before you leave in disgust, I'm simply quoting to you from the Zohar. I'm quoting to you from Kabbalah. This is Kabbalah speaking, not me. Kabbalah is not just about being a good person and learning how to succeed and blah, blah, woof, woof, yam, yam. Yeah, but that, yadda, yadda, yadda. That's not what it's about. It's about the reunification of God in many ways, principally through the unification of Jacob and Esau, Jews and Gentiles, not in a physical religion, but in a metaphysical house of Israel. And when that happens, quote, blessings accrue to the world. The virtuous woman, he said, is the community of Israel, and she that maketh ashamed refers to the idolatrous Gentiles, whom God cannot abide. As it says, quote, I abhorred them, unquote, in Leviticus. Notice the mission of Jesus, according to Paul, was reconcile that break between Gentile and God by reuniting them with Jew. Reuniting Esau and Jacob, Gentile and Jew, who were, you will remember, twins in the mother's womb. Not identical twins, fraternal twins, but they were twins who broke with each other, particularly Esau with Jacob after they were born. Rebbe Abba then said, let each of us give some exposition of the Torah. And he himself commenced with the verse, a virtuous woman, who can find her, from Proverbs. The virtuous woman, he said, is the community of Israel. Not the children of Israel, but the community of Israel. It isn't just the Jews who are born into the house of Israel, but the Gentiles who join them in there, not by joining any religion. It is a metaphysical joining. So the community of Israel represents a virtuous woman. The virtuous woman, he said, is the community of Israel, as we have just explained. Quote, who shall find, unquote, who shall succeed in being wholly in her and always with her, wholly in her, as in whole, male and female reunited, Jew and Gentile reunited, metaphysically, supernaturally, virtually. She is the community of Israel, as we have explained. Who shall find? Who shall succeed in being wholly in her and always with her? Quote, far above rubies is her price, unquote. Those who do not truly and wholeheartedly cleave to her, she sells into the hands of other peoples, and they are removed far from those precious holy pearls and have no share in them. Jesus came, among other reasons, to save the Gentiles by reuniting them with the Jews, by reuniting Jacob and Esau in his own person, thereby creating a whole new man in his own person and consecrating him to God. You ain't going to hear that elsewhere. We're going to stop here. Let's stop here and let me mark my place. And tomorrow we will continue. Right now, our recording session, who is the only person I invite to these recording sessions. Students are not invited. This is not a class. You can hear it as you are now by listening to it as a podcast on our YouTube channel. But Yishai, do you have a comment or a question you might want to raise? It might touch on comments and questions that people in the listening audience may have. All right, go ahead. There we go. Yishai. Powerful. The community of Israel includes all Gentiles brought into the house of Israel to be co-equal with born Jews, brought in metaphysically with nothing to do with the religion of Judaism, joined to reunite Jew and Gentile in their own persons, as Paul said of Yeshua. That is beautiful. Yishai, you're not that tired. That's a very clear statement. Thank you. Thank you. All right, now as we do at the end of every podcast, I will recite the sacred Kaddish, the prayer for the dead, in memory of our departed beloved friend and fellow Kohen and great teacher, the Tzaddik Leonard Cohen. Yiskadav Yiskadash Me'rabo, Bomo Divro Chirasei V'yamlech Malchusei, V'chayachon V'yom Echon V'chay L'chol Beis Yisrael, Bagala Uvizman Kovim Ro Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabo Me'berach Ve'elam Me'omaya. Yisparach V'yistabach V'yisparach V'yisomam V'yisnasei V'yishadav V'yisalei V'yisalal Shmei D'Kutsho B'richu Ve'elam Mincha V'yirchasa V'shirasa Tishmechasa V'nechemasa Dameron Bomo V'imru Amen. Yehei Shlomo Rabba Min Shemaya V'chainu Leinu V'yakol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Osei Shalom B'mamav Hu Ya'asei Shalom Oleinu V'yakol Yisrael V'imru Amen. And let everyone say Amen. Baruch Hashem. Thank you all for being here. God willing, we'll all be together again tomorrow when we will continue with where we left off in the very beginning of Volume 5, having completed Volumes 1, 2, 3, and 4, cover to cover, over the past 30 years. God bless you all. See you tomorrow. In the meantime, Yivarechecha Adonai